So as you have seen in our previous lesson, that Marshall is doing very well for black, and more and more with time, players started to try to avoid playing Marshall. So one of the options, as you remember, is to play d3 here, and this variation, bishop d3, and then followed by a3, knight c3. But if already rook e1 is played, castle, b5, bishop b3 castle, then white has a number of options instead of playing c3, which leads to Marshall after d5. So let's check them one by one. Okay, d3 is possible, of course, but it leads more or less to this closed, so-called closed Ruy Lopez, which I have shown you earlier, a couple of lessons earlier. d3, d6. So now c3 probably has to be played. Knight a5, of course, is a threat. So a3 doesn't make much sense here because it seems like in this position white to play. Usually knight c3 white is playing here, and then he played rook e1 all of a sudden. And black, of course, has just a better version of this 6d3 system and probably more than one way to equalize. I guess the simplest is knight a5, bishop a2, c5. And if you remember, with a knight on c3 instead of rook on e1, white had before knight c6, knight d5 idea here. With rook on e1, it doesn't work already because on b4, black can simply go knight c6. So knight c3, and now black is in time to play bishop e6, and this seems to be well, no problem at all for black. So if already here you decide to play d3, d6, probably c3 is the way to play. Well, I saw recently, well, white started to play bishop d2 also. There was some games trying to prevent knight a5, even on a quite top level. But yeah, I don't really believe you can play like this because still it's not so clear what is white's next. But again, this you can check. Probably it will not be a drama if you are playing black. It will not force you to stop playing Ruy Lopez. But otherwise c3, and then, as I've mentioned already, the main line is knight a4, bishop c2, c5, and in general, black is perfectly okay in this line. So then, what else? d4. d4 is an important move here. If you are playing black, of course, you need to study it, unless you are happy with d6, because after d6, white has nothing better than playing c3. And then we move to this bishop g4, to this system, which, in my opinion, where black is in general, doing okay, but white has his certain chances to get a plus. So this I covered it in the d6 lesson about d6 instead of castle, so you can check it there. But that is always possible for black. But white's idea is that at least he doesn't want so much to play Marshall, that he is ready, to play this system, which maybe is nothing special, but at least white considers that he has more chances to fight for advantage than in Marshall. But actually, knight takes d4 seems to equalize very directly. This, of course, you need to to know and to analyze it with engines to check games. But I think that is the main reason why d4 is not played anymore on the top level. Knight takes d4, and now white has a choice of, there is a bishop takes f7 move, because after rook f7, knight e5, it seems that removing the knight, it doesn't work because white takes on f7 playing e5, so black has to just play rook f8, giving up the pawn, but black has enough compensation here, like bishop b7, knight c3, c5. You can check theory here, queen d1, queen c7, and the main, at least the main line goes like this, knight g4 takes, and now black can play rook a8, or bishop d6, g3, rook a8, then bishop e5 is an idea at some point. Many games already, many computer games, black has enough compensation here. And then knight takes d4, e4, e5, knight e8. And now c3. This is the most maybe interesting way of playing with white. White definitely has some initiative for the pawn, but again, the position is pretty direct, and many games were played. Again, Levon Aranyan is one of the players who had maybe most of games from the top players from the black side, and I think finally he managed to equalize very clearly here, and I think that's why nowadays the system is also not so popular on the top level, because white cannot really find a way how to get an advantage. But again, it is a possible if you are playing on a lower level, not on the super tournaments, then it's an interesting system because black has to be very careful. One thing is that maybe actually c5 might be not too bad. I mean, this position cd, c4, bishop c2, d5. Of course, white has an initiative, I mean, potential attack on the king side, but knight c3, knight c7, but I checked, again, computer statistics is pretty okay for black here. So maybe that is playable also. But d takes c3 is much more direct. Knight takes c3, d6, queen f3, bishop e6. White is playing knight d5 here. Well, check the theory, check the games of first of all, Aranyan, other strong players. I think it's already, again, on the top level, practically sterilized, and black is making more or less a forced draw in this variation. Then what else? Very popular was h3, and there was a big discussion and a lot of games played with this move h3. I myself played it a lot with white and also with black. That was, by the way, one of the topics of our match again with Peter Leka in 2004 World Championship match. I played with white a lot h3. So everything was quite good. I mean, the idea is that in case of d5, this already doesn't work so well, because here it is very important, rook e1, then followed by knight c3. It's very important that white has this c3 square for the knight, and black simply doesn't have enough compensation for the pawn in this position. So the idea is to avoid Marshall, and in case of d6, just to transpose by playing c3 to the classical Ruy Lopez. So that's why probably, black must play bishop b7. And now d3. I think the point is that in case of c3, black has already d5, and here black is doing very well. So d3, that was the idea. And mainly d6 was played in this position. So in our times, some 15, 20 years ago, d6, and now white would play a3. So something you see it very, very similar to the variation the 6 instead of rook e1, d3, a3. Similar type of play, only that the black's bishop is already on b7, which is probably a little bit into white's favor. Still, of course, black is very solid, and there are a lot of games here. It's perfectly playable for black. But definitely white has also some chances for opening plus. And there are many plans. Black has many plans. I think the system also was very much liked by Vishy Anand. He played more than once against me. This system with white, I used to play, to like playing Marshall myself for some time. And that was the main anti-Marshall, so to say, system against it. And I preferred knight b8 plan. I played a lot of knight b8. You can check, for instance, was an interesting game, a draw against Garry Kasparov in Linares 2003 or 2004. I don't remember exactly. Yes, then I played a few games with Vishy Anand, knight b8. Another option is knight a5, for instance, bishop a2, c5. Now white is already trying to play knight d2, knight f1, and in fact, you see typical, again, situation in this type of structures that I think the main theoretical move for black is to play bishop c8 followed by bishop e6. So trying to change this bishop. White had some chances here. There were games, and sometimes white would get certain plus, sometimes not, but it's not so easy for black. Then another, also move is queen d7. I think that is what, by the way, was played in Karyakin-Carlsen, fourth game of the World Championship match. Karyakin tried the system, and Magnus played d6, queen d7, and knight bd2, rook e8, something like this, c3, bishop f8, knight f1. Again, Magnus managed to get a good position out of the opening, but maybe the play, White's play could have been improved. So again, it's not that easy. The problem is I could go much deeper into this variation, but the problem is that nowadays d5 seems to almost kill this line. Yeah, and in our times, at that time, it was considered to be not enough for equality, but now with modern engines, it seems that it's almost killing the line. And that's why it practically disappeared from the tournament practice. By the way, in the sixth game of the match, Karyakin-Carlsen, Magnus probably repeated all the variations just in case. In the first, he played d6, and then he prepared and already played d5, and it quickly ended in a draw out of preparation, I guess, both players' preparation. So as I understand, again, if not d5, this system would have been much more popular, and there is, a lot still to discover in d6 a3 system, but d5 seems to be a very serious problem for White now. Knight takes e5. Well, there is some move a4. I see it's played, but I don't think it also gives anything. So the most principal is knight takes e5 and knight d4. Actually, computers also think that here Black also has some chances to equalize, but knight d4 is very direct, and well, here you need to study theory and check again with engines, but it seems to me that White has nothing here. Okay, just you need to know and to memorize some direct lines, but simply that Black in many lines simply has enough compensation, taking this bishop and just playing positional chess. For instance, if knight d2 c5 is okay, and knight c3 I think was played by Sergei Karyakin, knight b4 now, bishop f4, he took on b3, c5, and then they both played very quickly another, I don't know, 5-6 moves, so it was clearly their preparation, and it ended in a, drawish position, and finally the game actually was the quickest game in the match, so it's clear that both players were very well prepared. But also, even visually you see that Black has two bishops, active position, very typical Marshall compensation, so in case if he manages f6, queen d7, I don't see a reason why White can really pretend to be better here, because this white square, white color bishop on b7 is very powerful. So I think it's just a matter of a direct play. Like if I remember correctly, I think knight e4 was played, some direct play, computer analysis, and draw at the end of the day. So h3 system, if you are Black, I would. Again, if you want just to play a game, d6 is perfectly playable, of course. If you want to equalize, really just in a very direct and straightforward manner, then probably d5 and to learn some theory here. For White, if you manage to find something against d5, then definitely it's a very interesting anti-Marshall system because this position is rich, and here White definitely can try. So that is about h3, and so let's move now to the a4 move, which is another attempt to avoid Marshall. Quite popular, maybe the most popular nowadays after this discovery that h3, bishop b7, d3, d5 is probably enough to equalize. So now most of the time, if White in this position wants to avoid Marshall, which is happening more and more often, then a4 is usually the most popular choice of White. So a4, the idea of this move is if Black is playing rook b8, then after AB, AB, C3, well, it's a pretty much better version of all those positions because White has the A line and already this d5 marshal doesn't work so well. It's very important that white has a line, so rook b8 doesn't equalize here. There is a move I saw recently, somebody played d5 even here. I don't know what was really the idea, but you can check it with engines. I haven't checked it yet, but since nobody really plays it on the top level, I suppose it's not working. And then the most popular move is b4 here. But actually bishop b7, in my opinion, is perfectly fine. It's a complicated game. It's less straightforward than before, but I think that according to the state of theory, Black is doing pretty well here. So hard to say what would be my advice to you. I mean, b4 is maybe more analysis. It's better analyzed than bishop b7, at least with modern engines, but more straightforward way of playing for Black, and I believe also probably enough finally to equalize. But all in all, none of it, neither b4, bishop b7, is as direct as, for instance, Marshall. Yeah, so white has still some tries and some chances. White always in these lines can get some complicated Ruy Lopez position. So it is one of the most interesting anti-Marshall ways for white. So I can recommend you, if you don't want to play Marshall, main lines taking the pawn on e5, maybe a4 is an interesting try. You can try to play a4 system, because there are still some small problems for Black, still experience some small problems here and there, so it's not so easy to equalize with Black. So let's start, let's say, with b4. Now white has a choice of moves. Again, if c3, then, well, first of all, I don't know if after d6, a4, b4 is in white's favor. I'm not totally sure, but it seems that d5 is again fine. And if white takes the pawn, now already bishop b7, even bishop e6 actually is quite okay statistically for Black, but bishop b7 seems to be doing well, because white's problem is that after d4 now it's difficult a bit to develop the knight because of the c3 pawn is hanging, and the main idea is that after queen f3, Black has bishop d6. It's important to know this move. Again, don't ask me why it works. I suppose in case of rook takes d5, there are some rook e8 ideas. And if bishop takes d5, c6. Rook e2, cd5, and Black has a very good compensation here for the pawn. But again, if you want, you can play d6 with Black as well. c3 is not very fashionable. Then d4 is very straightforward way of playing. Here, knight takes d4 is not so good anymore. You remember, without a4 before, without including a4 before, knight d4 was good enough to equalize. Here, I suppose probably that already this bishop takes f7 check system might be more dangerous, because white has this c4 square. Yeah. So after d4, Black is already playing d6 here. But in case of c3, now again already a4 b4 is in Black's favor, because he takes on c3, takes bishop g4, and here compared to the variation d4 d6 c3, immediately before instead of a4, here Black has no problems because he has this b line for his rook. So this seems to be not dangerous. That's why white usually takes d5. And this type of position, well, actually, it's quite tricky. It's not so easy for Black. It looks totally equal, but in fact, because white has a c4 square potentially for his knight, so the bit better pawn structure on the queen side, Black has to be careful still. And there are many games and many top players were trying here to get some plus with white. Sometimes would manage, but slowly with years, Black, I think, found quite a number of solid ways to equalize at the end of the day. Knight takes e5 is slightly more popular than d5, even though d5 might also be enough for equality. Again, a lot of games of Levon Aranyan. He's a classic of this martial and anti-martial systems. I think he liked to take with d-pawn. In my opinion, after d5, maybe white can exchange queens, queen d8, rook d8, and try to fight for advantage in this endgame. But I think Levon Aranyan already showed quite a clear way to equalize against it. But maybe knight bd2 can be a try still for white. Bishop c5, queen e2, then trying to get the knight to c4. I'm not sure it gives white an advantage, but it's at least not so easy for black. That's why I personally myself wanted to play knight takes e5 in this position. Knight takes e5 usually is played d5, and queen e2 or queen f3 is, let's say, I think here you need to be a bit careful with black. I mean, in case if white manages, let's say, develop the queen, bishop to e3, f3, knight d2, knight to c4, he can get a certain positional pressure, but it's still far from achieving, white is still far from achieving this setup, so black should be in time to create his play. In the meantime, so queen e2 and queen f3 are two main moves. I just show you, you need of course to study this position more carefully, but the main lines, in my opinion, are like this. For instance, queen f3, bishop c5, h3, because black quite often wants to go knight g4, bishop b7, knight d2, and now a5. For instance, knight c4, rook e8, and I think the idea is that in case of bishop g5, black plays rook a6 like this. So you see black is very active also. Of course, this knight on c4 is good, and the pawn on a5 potentially can be a bit weak, but black has very active pieces. So according to the theory, it's okay for black. And then another way of playing is queen e2. Now there is a way bishop c5, bishop e3, bishop d4. Why black is very close to equalize here, but still maybe a little bit more comfortable for white. So I personally, I think I like more to play a5 here. And in case of bishop g5, very important now, queen d4 move. So again, yeah, you see, you have to be a bit careful in these positions. You need to know the precise, moves. Queen d4 seems to be doing fine because after c3, bc, knight c3, c6. Now, because of the b line and the certain weakness of the b2 pawn, again, there were quite a number of games in this position. I think finally the assessment is that black equalizes. Or after a5, knight d2, and let's say bishop c5, for instance, now knight c4, queen e7. White has a little bit of pressure here, a little bit better pawn structure, but all in all, nothing really special. I think that if you know this position well, get a bit of practice with black, I mean, you will not experience any problems really here. Then what else? A5 actually is an interesting move. I don't know if d5, ed5 now, what is this version of Marshall, but usually black considers that it's not so good. I don't know, maybe yes, maybe not, but most of the time black is playing d6 here, and now of course white can try to play d3, but another idea is to try to play c3. This is becoming kind of fashionable nowadays. The idea is that bishop e6, now at least white can just take and play d4 immediately, so this I don't recommend you. Probably it should be a bit better for white. So usually black is playing rook b8, and white tries to play bishop c4. Another story is d3, and this position can arise via different move orders. I'm going to show you later what is going on after d3, but bishop c4 is a strange move, I guess, just trying to avoid black playing bishop e6, and now there is a lot of computer games as usual. Black has a huge amount of options in this position. Even playing like this, h6 makes sense. a useful move, but one of the interesting variation is quite direct, is knight takes c4, and now practically by force it gets to this very strange position, bishop d5, because if rook takes c4, d5, of course. So white is playing bishop d5, knight f2, king f2, knight takes a5. Of course, the idea is that in case of rook a5, black has c6. So knight takes a5, cb4, c6, bishop a2, rook takes b4. I mean, extremely strange position. Hard to say what is going on, but again, the statistics is somewhat in white's favor. It seems that maybe it is objectively okay for black, but a bit easier to play with white. So this has to be still checked. Maybe actually d5 already here is quite okay. I mean, also you have to analyze it. Takes, for instance, knight e5, takes, bishop b7, and maybe already trying to choose another plan after d4. What computers are doing, playing bishop f6 and rook e1, c5. Already trying to fight against white center, using maybe sometimes the rook on b8 is, can become active via the b line. Maybe it also equalizes, but all in all, a5 is an interesting possible move, but gives black quite a number of options. First of all, d5 has to be checked, and then, of course, after c3, let's say rook b8, bishop c4, black has many different moves. But something to think about if you are playing white, to play e5. Otherwise, then what else? White is usually playing d3 here. And d6, of course, is the most logical move. But actually, there is a very strange move, bishop c5. Really looking strange. Black is almost given a tempi, compared to all those bishop c5 variations. But in fact, maybe it's perfectly playable, because there is no clear way. Non-human games, no computer games have shown any clear way for white to get anything special after bishop c5. For instance, okay, in case of c3, then black plays rook b8, and getting this b line. Of course, there are many ways for white to continue and to get a very playable, complicated position, but no clear advantage. For instance, bishop g5 seems to make sense also once black removed his bishop from e7 to pin this knight, h6, bishop h4, d6, knight bd2, let's say rook b8. Also a very complicated position, but again, computer statistics is pretty okay for black here. Or knight bd2, then black is just playing d6, c3, rook b8, let's say h3, h6. So it's like a tempi down practically for black of these bishop c5 systems, but in exchange, white haven't played d4, so white played in quite a modest way, d3, knight bd2. Again, it's definitely playable for white, but also for black. So I want to attract your attention on this move, bishop c5. If you want to play with black, this variation, perfectly playable in my opinion. But also d6 is okay after d6. So now black wants to play knight a5 already. Knight a5, c5. So for instance, knight d2 is a possible move here, but knight a5, bishop a2, c5. Black wants just to play bishop e6, etc. So if you remember, in some lines, black would play first bishop b7 and then bishop c8, bishop e6. Here, he haven't lost this tempi. So of course, if he manages now bishop e6, he will be doing at least fine. So white is usually trying here to play c3 very quickly. Let's say rook b8, d4, maybe some chances for white for a small advantage, even though I'm not sure. But knight c6 seems to equalize quite comfortably, because white's only chance here is to play d4 to get an advantage. And then there is some theory again, as usual, takes, knight b3, bishop b7, and theory is still going on from this position. And according to computers and games, it seems that here black is doing fine. It equalizes. So that's why white usually is playing a5 here, just to stop knight a5. And here, well, normally black is playing, well, bishop e6, or first rook b8 followed by bishop e6. Well, there are many ways of playing this position with black. For instance, even knight a7, a very strange move, is I've noticed that is doing, well, more or less okay statistically in computer games. So black just wants to get his c5, knight c6. White definitely needs to try to, if he wants to play for advantage, to play c3. And now black can take and play c5. Not very popular way of playing in human chess, but and I agree, looks a bit strange, but maybe also playable. Normally, of course, black is just choosing bishop e6, a very logical move, and probably white's best chance is to take on e6 and play c3. And this is becoming, well, rather fashionable nowadays. White is trying to get something here, at least a complicated game with certain chances, for a small plus. Because early on, knight bd2 was usually played. There are many games, again, like 15, 20 years ago on this position, and some discussions. White tried to get something here, but frankly, first of all, even in human games, they wouldn't normally manage. Again, I can advise you to look at games of Levon Aranyan in this line. He actually won some games against very strong players. Here with black, he played it very well, this type of position. And black can do something like this, rook b8, h3, queen c8, for example, one of the possible ways of playing, but also simply taking on b3, knight b3, rook e8. Yeah, it's very little for white. I mean, now again, when we have this computer databases, I can tell you that in this position, I think it's actually, again, some maybe 1,000 computer games. And in fact, I think black has a better statistics here than white, which shows something. I mean, of course, it doesn't mean that it's better for black. Of course not, but it probably means that in general, in this complicated position, well, black is not worse at all. So it's just a complicated equal position. But after bishop c6, f6, c3, yeah, this is the system which might be also interesting to try with white. Usually black is playing sooner or later rook b8, let's say here, or first queen a8, knight d2, rook b8, then trying to put the rook on b5 after bc. White is at some point trying to push d4. There were, in last few years, there were quite a number of good games, I mean, of strong players in this position. Well, white has some chances here. Normally, I think statistics is fine for black. And if I'm not mistaken, even in the latest candidate tournament, there was a game, maybe Vashiela Graf is Dingliren, which also ended in a draw. There were some other games of strong players. From other point of view, I remember Magnus Carlsen managed to beat Levon Aranyan here with white in one of the classical chess games some years ago. So this position you need to analyze. It's maybe the main position of a4 b4 system nowadays, because everything else seems to be, black seems to be doing really fine, and already after many years of practice managed to find a very clear ways how to equalize. Here it's still playable, again, a lot of computer games, but at least in this particular position, white has a bit better statistics. So it probably means that it's, well, at least white who is trying to play for advantage here. I'm not sure he has an advantage, but at least it's not so simple for black than in most of the other lines. So that is a theory on the move before. I think it's doing fine for black. In general, no really big problem, but white also has some options which are still not totally sterilized, let's say. There is another move, bishop b7, which is not that fashionable nowadays after a4, but I think you can check games of Evgeny Tomashevsky. He played a lot of games with bishop b7, and he knows very well the all ideas and all the theory of this variation. So if you want to play it with black, first thing I will advise you is to check his games. I've preparing for this course, I've checked again all the state of theory in this system, and frankly, I don't understand why it's not it's less popular than before, because according to the state of theory, I think black is doing perfectly fine after bishop b7, even though game is very complicated. So usually white is playing d3. Again, in case of c3, black simply has d5 already. So d3, and now, well, normally d6 is the main move. But actually, d5 might also equalize. And I remember even there was I think Magnus Carlsen played in classical chess against Fabiano Caruana, and that is definitely means, since a very serious and principal opponent, I think it was Stavanger 2017 maybe. So it definitely means that it's a serious move. It's not just a bluff, d5. So you can try to check. It might also be finally equalizing, even though still it's not so popular. So it means probably white has some chances to fight for advantage. So let's say e d5, knight d5. So the idea is it takes. Now black has to take with the bishop. And okay, you remember that the same position in this h3 variation. And a3, black was doing fine. Here, white has more chances to fight for some advantage. If knight d5, probably knight d4 is still okay, but maybe knight d2. And I think finally, white was always having a bit of pressure here, so there was no clear way for black to equalize in after d5. But it was also quite close, so it's a very serious move, which is not yet, there is not enough practice yet to give a final verdict on d5. But by the way, rook e8 is also doing pretty okay according to the theory. So the idea is that after knight c3, black is in time to play b4, knight d5, knight a5, very important. And in case of knight e7, queen e7, bishop e2, now d5. E d5, queen d6, and then taken back with the bishop on d5, and black is just in time to equalize here. So after rook e8, usually white plays knight bd2, and now something like this: bishop f8, knight f1, h6. Again, a very complicated position, typical Ruy Lopez position. The idea of maybe white can try to play knight e3 at least to stop d5. Again, considers to be more comfortable for white in human play, but I've checked computer game statistics, is very good for black, so computers are pretty happy with black here. So it might be objectively doing well. So the idea of rook e8, again, I want to explain that black wants to keep for the moment the pawn on d7, so to be able one day maybe to play d5, immediately, not like d6 followed by d5, but first wants to play rook e8, bishop f8, h6, and then try to play d5 later. So it is an interesting variation, rook e8 as well. But the good old way of playing d6 is also perfectly playable here, and the theory goes like this. Now, I think the main move is knight bd2, according to theory. There is a move bishop d2. I noticed that it was played from time to time. So the idea is to stop black from playing knight a5. Yeah, maybe again, I'm always a bit skeptical about such moves in the opening and Ruy Lopez, but might be interesting at least to get a little bit unconventional type of position, because otherwise. In all those main lines after knight c3 or knight bd2, there is a huge amount of theory already, and it seems that black is doing fine. So for instance, after knight c3, black plays knight a5 usually, bishop a2, b4, knight e2, c5, knight g3, and this position, frankly, it looks very nice for white, because the knight is already on g3, black had put his bishop on b7, so black can play rook b8 or bishop c8 even. Looks like black lost some tempis, and visually, again, it's very nice for white, but surprisingly enough, black has his simple play, rook b8, bishop e6, knight c6. Surprisingly, computer statistics is very good here for black. Actually, it's more than 50% in black's favor. Even though I find it really strange, because it's clear that it's still, if somebody is fighting for something, it's still white, but black's position seems to be objectively much better than it looks. So that's why knight bd2 usually is played. And again, black's plan is the same, to play knight a5, bishop a2, c5, knight f1, b4. Okay, the difference here that white doesn't have to play knight g3, so because with playing knight c3 and with a knight on e2, he had no other choice than play knight g3. Here, the knight can go to e3, for instance. So let's say c3, knight c6. Again, looks like white got actually very nice version of Ruy Lopez. Frankly, looks very, very prosperous for white, but again, statistics is good for black here in computer games. I don't know why, but let's say knight e3, computers just playing rook b8, very quiet, bishop c8, and they're not worried about this knight on f5. So for me, it's a little bit strange. Again, I have my feeling is that white definitely can try to fight for advantage here, but again, well, when there are a lot of computer games and they're quite strong and they cannot really find a way, so maybe it means that it's my general feeling is betraying me, and black is maybe quite okay in this position. Or also another way of playing is, let's say, h3, again, rook b8, knight g3, a5, knight f5, bishop c8. So you see computers are playing very, very quietly here. Then bishop e6, they don't care about white taking the bishop on e7, they don't care about white having the knight on f5. Well, who am I to argue with machines? But yeah, I would be a bit worried playing like this with black, but maybe it's okay. But again, there is another option, is rook e8, also very interesting. Well, there is a lot of theory in this a4, so it is a very important line, I believe. From all the anti-Marshall lines, it's maybe the biggest amount of theory here and the most complicated line. So if you're playing Marshall with black, you definitely have to study it very carefully to decide whether you want to play b4 system or bishop b7, or maybe both from time to time, to change. I think both are perfectly playable. And from the white side, my recommendation is that, again, if you don't want to play the main gambit, then probably a4 is the most interesting way of playing. And even if maybe objectively black is capable of equalizing with the accurate play, but definitely the position is very complicated, and it's not trivial for black to equalize. So that is, together with this 6d3 system, maybe it's those are two main weapons nowadays for white if he wants to get a complicated game without a lot of forced lines and still have some chances to fight for opening advantage. So that's all I think about the Ruy Lopez in particular, and e4, e5 in general. I tried my best, and I think I gave you quite a serious overview of all the logical, at least, systems after e4, e5. Of course, it's extremely rich, a lot of different types of positions. So again, I tried to give you not only some concrete theoretical knowledge, which you can get, with your database and computers, but also try to explain you as much as possible general ideas, important typical ideas, the nuances of move orders. So again, trying to explain not only what variation is playable or fashionable nowadays, but why also, and that is, I believe, important. And just at the end, I want to of this course, I want to mention that actually I believe that this course might be useful for you, not only for a certain concrete knowledge, just to start practicing and playing different opening system after e4, e5 with either color or both colors, but also because of the richness of the arising positions, it hopefully will help also to improve your general understanding of chess. And that was maybe not the main, but still a very important goal of this course. So I wish you luck, I wish you success playing e4, e5. I've played all my life, more with black than with white, but also a lot with white, and I always enjoyed the richness of the positions which arise in this many centuries old opening.